down. I did not have a butt attack! Don't do it! Pistachios. Where are you?
Paul, I was wanting to ask, you know us now, right?
In the opening scene of the movie, we go back to Moorcroft, Wyoming in 1947 and see a small dog named Paul scratching the door, trying to get out of the house. A little girl then emerges and lets him out. As Paul trots out across the property, he begins to sense something in the air. We hear low humming sounds as Paul looks up. A soft orange glow reflects in its eyes and Paul whimpers, leaving the little girl stunned and speechless as she draws near. Then we are introduced to Graham Willie and Clive Goling, two British sci-fi geeks set off across the road towards the San Diego Convention Center in present day. There are attendees in Comic-Con costumes pouring all over the event. Graham and Clive make their way to join the line of people waiting to meet the actor, Michael Biehn. After a long day, Graham and Clive return to their hotel's room, filled with bags of stuff from the convention. The two friends believe this trip to the U.S. is part of their dream come true, as they'll drive through America's most famous UFO hotspots after the Comic-Con. They are Area 51 and the Black Mailbox in Nevada, then down to Camp Verde, then to Apache Junction, and then on down to Roswell, New Mexico for the site of the famous crash of 47. The following morning, Graham and Clive are waiting for their transport. A large RV pulls up, and the two quickly run off towards and speed up. At a stop in Arizona, Graham and Clive have a fun time with a bartender named Pat. The two are quite impressed with the UFO and alien paraphernalia surrounded in the bar. As Clive goes to the toilet, Graham is left alone. Right at the time, two grumpy men enter, and Graham becomes uneasy. Clive strikes Graham as he returns, full of excitement about a dispenser which is shaped like an alien's head in the Malian toilet. The two men begin to smear Clive and Graham as weirdos and assume they might be homosexual. Sensing the tension, Clive and Graham hurriedly leave the bar. Clive accidentally reverses and crashes the RV to the men's truck, leaving it a dent. At the Black Mailbox, after taking photos, the two spot a truck from a distance. They quickly scramble for the RV, thinking that it must be the two odd men in the bar. As the car passes their RV, it suddenly flips over and tumbles several times, bouncing across the road and sliding to a smoking stop on its roof. The RV pulls up to the crashed vehicle and stops. Graham and Clive approach the smoking car, but no one is found there. Graham decides to dial for help, but before he can do so, a male voice raises from behind them. While the friends are still confused, the figure stands and steps into the light. Standing in front of them, clad only in cut-off short and flip-flops, is an alien. As the alien commands the two to put the phone down, Clive drops backwards in a dead faint and wets himself. The alien tries to calm hysterical Graham down and explains that he wouldn't hurt anyone, he only needs help. In a hurry, the alien introduces himself to be Paul. The alien wants to get Clive into the RV, and he'll explain everything on the way. The RV starts up and kicks off in the darkness. En route, Graham asks where to go. Paul says head to the north. Back to the crashed car, we see a suited man get out of a sedan car. He is a shady government agent called Zoyle. He touches the wet patch, licks his finger, and quickly spits it out. He then informs his mysterious female superior over the radio that he's closing in on Paul. The female then orders Zoyle to handle Paul personally. A few hours later, Clive slowly opens his eyes. As Paul is eating pistachios, Clive suddenly grabs the alien in the neck and speaks in Klingon language. Clive only stops when Graham attempts to explain about Paul and what happened. Paul now has a chance to tell the friends that he comes from a small planet in the northern spiral arm of the Andromeda Galaxy. The only way they travel that long distance is by wormhole. Yet Clive believes the alien is not real and tries to slap Paul in the face. Clive only releases Paul when they look out of the RV to see the flashing lights of a roadblock. Graham slows down, only to realize that Paul has vanished. Graham and Clive stand outside the RV being questioned by an agent named Haggard. We can hear noise and activity from the RV made by another agent called O'Reilly, who is aboard the RV and checking it around. After finding nothing suspicious except for some pissy jeans, the agents let go of the friends. As the two board the RV and speed up, Paul materializes from thin air behind them. The two agents' attention is drawn to the sound of screeching tires. They see the RV in the distance swerve across the road before righting itself and continuing on its way. The following morning, Zoil meets up with the two agents to report about the mission. Zoil becomes pissed off and orders the two of them to keep following the RV and the two British tourists. Back to the friends, they stop by a gas station and get some food. Clive and Graham enter the store, trying to look as casual as they can when they see a police officer pull onto the forecourt. The RV guns up the road into the desert. Suddenly, something strikes the windshield. Everyone jumps and Graham brings the RV to a halt. On the road lies a yellow and black bird. It is very dead. Paul then picks up the bird in his hands and begins to reborn it, wowing Clive and Graham. Just a second, Paul stuffs the bird in his mouth with a horrible crunch. Back to the gas station, Zoil and his men are questioning the police officer and the cashier. Zoil returns to his vehicle and reports to his superior. She orders Zoil to bring back that alien as soon as possible, no matter what it takes. At dusk, the RV pulls up to spend a night at an RV park. They meet with the park's owner named Ruth, who wears glasses but one eye is blacked out. After checking in, she opens the gate to allow Clive to drive through. Graham soon has a crush on the American young lady and watches her intently as they pass. Ruth goes back to her RV, only to get shouted by her abusive and controlling father, Moses. Later that night, Clive, Graham, and Paul have a very fun time barbecue together. Paul reveals that he has been on Earth for 60 years. He first landed on Earth for a science mission, but suddenly his ship went offline and Paul crashed in the middle of a field in Wyoming. There was a little girl called Tara who helped Paul out of the wreck, and then a bunch of army guys came along, bringing him away. Ruth realizes there are actually 3 shadows behind the new guest's RV. Before she can figure out those tiny legs underneath the vehicle, she is ordered to get back inside by Moses. The next morning, Ruth decides to check on the RV for the unseen guest last night. As confronting Paul in his real being, Ruth screams and collapses on the floor. Worrying that Ruth will mess up with Paul's identity as she wakes up, the 3 of them think it is better to bring her along and find a way to explain to her later. However, they need their passports back. Just then, Paul vanishes. In Moses' RV, the door opens, seemingly by itself. Paul materializes in the kitchen and starts looking around for Clive's passport. Moses then comes face to face with Paul. He bursts out of the RV, pursued by Moses, who is loading a shotgun. Paul makes it to reach Graham as their RV speeds up. In the RV, Ruth slowly gains consciousness. In panic, she still can't believe Paul and continues to call him a demon. She starts to pray furiously. Meanwhile, Zoil and his men talk with Moses, who claims Ruth was abducted by a demon. After giving all the information about Ruth and the friends, Zoil leaves with his agents. Moses, however, decides to find Ruth and kill the demons by himself with the shotgun after that. Back to the friends, Paul decides to heal Ruth's eye. Astonished by the result, Ruth becomes trust in Paul and the friends. At night, the group decides to stop by a busy bar. Ruth makes a payphone to her father at the back. However, Agent Zoil picks up the phone. He warns that Ruth is in danger and the police need her and the friends to turn themselves in. Ruth doesn't know that they are talking on a satellite phone, with Haggard working on a laptop nearby and O'Reilly listening in. Ruth panics and slams down the phone. She realizes what she may have done and rushes back toward the bar with the friends. The RV roars to life again after that. At night, the group makes a campfire and sits together. Paul recalls the night he had the crash 60 years ago. He killed Tara's dog by accident, and Paul was the very first English word he knew. Although feeling terrible for Tara, Paul never has a chance to say sorry. The reason Paul gets chased by the government is they need his brain and obtaining some multipotent stem cells for further secret projects. The following morning, Graham and Clive walk down the busy main street. Between them is Paul. He is dressed in the little cowboy suit from the shop window, his hat pulled down low over his face. They need to buy some fireworks for his plan to leave the Earth. Meanwhile, Zoil and his men keep tracing down the group. Moses also drives by himself, attempting to save his daughter. Eventually, Paul can return to Tara's farmhouse to apologize for the death of her dog Paul in the 47. Tara appears relieved to see that Paul simply exists after spending her entire life being mocked for what she claimed she saw. She starts her gas stove to make tea, but she is interrupted by Haggard and O'Reilly on one side of the house and Zoil on the other. As the crew flees and drives away with Paul, O'Reilly fires at them, igniting the gas and destroying the house. The agents hastily follow the RV. Haggard, on the other hand, drives off a cliff and is dead, leaving Zoil to pursue him. Zoil assures his boss that he'll have Paul within an hour, but she's had enough of waiting, telling Zoil that she's ordered a military reaction, forcing Zoil to fire his radio. When Paul, Graham, Clive, Ruth and Tara arrive at the rendezvous, they set off a signal by fireworks and wait. Just then, strange orange lights appear above the surrounding trees, and everyone thought it was Paul's Jenga. However, it is an army helicopter with the big guy on board, who is Zoil's unseen superior. As she and 3 troops move to shoot Paul, Zoil arrives, and it's revealed that he was Paul's inside contact who had helped him to escape. Zoil tries to disarm the troops, but is wounded in the shoulder. The big guy is punched out by Tara. Just then Moses appears with a shotgun and kills Graham. Paul decides to cure him, but he takes the worst of the damage. Paul then passes out from exhaustion. The other characters gather around his lifeless body, stretched on the grass, for a moment. Paul then stands up, having cured himself. The alien ship finally arrives, and Paul starts to leave, telling Tara that she is joining him to live a better life. Paul says his last goodbye to the friends before vanishing into the galaxy. 2 years later, Graham, Clive, and Ruth are shown again at a comic convention, promoting their new mega-successful comic book, Paul. Like and subscribe to watch more videos like this.